So really.
Awesome.
And happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Happy Mother's Day. Yes, definitely. I didn't know if you're a it's kind of weird. You don't know if anyone's a mother or not a mother, but I certainly am, and a grandma as well. So,
oh,
so
excellent.
It's all good. Yeah.
I hope they're treating you well today.
Yes, they are. Dinner. Yeah.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, I have one son. He's visiting his grandmother right now.
Oh, that's nice. I'm sure she appreciates it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How old
Hi,
is
everyone. He's 5.
he?
He'll be 6 in July.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Hi, everyone joining us. Thank you so much. We'll get started in just a second. I'm here with Kate Donovan of Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. And we're going to talk about growing tomatoes today. We've done a few different topics, so I just had to think about which one we were on right now. Before we get started, though, while we're waiting for people to join, I just wanted to make a few quick program announcements. We have some good events coming up. First of all, on Friday, May 13th at 1 p.m., we have new compelling questions with the question, does truth matter? And if it doesn't, what do we do? And that's with Dr. Joshua Tepley. He's an associate professor of philosophy at St. Anselm College. On Thursday, May 19th, we welcome back Sarah Lohman, culinary historian, to talk about the story of sriracha. So that should be really fun. Our friends of the library are also putting together some sriracha tasting samples. So you can pick those up. I believe they're going to be available after the program. And then on Friday, we have another trivia night, a virtual trivia night, Friday, May 20th, beginning at 7 p.m. And then I also want to make sure that everyone knows about Ocean Vuong, our On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous author. The author of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, our one book author, is going to be coming to us live for a virtual visit on Thursday, May 26th at 7 p.m. And finally, I believe the next time Kate will be joining us online will be to talk about organic gardening. Is that correct, Kate?
I'll take your word. I'll take your word. I think so. Yes, the organic approach. Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure that's the next.
That's right. One. That's right. Yep. Yep. No,
but today she's going to talk about everyone's favorite crop, tomatoes. They're not always the easiest thing to grow, but everyone loves them when they grow right. Just a little bit about the presenter today. Kate Donovan helps clients grow food through lectures, garden planning, soil testing, tilling, and building raised beds. She's the founder of a 69,000 member Facebook gardening group called Vegetable, Fruit, Herbs, and Flower Gardening. Kate maintains 7 extra long raised beds, considers her home her horticultural laboratory, and tries new varieties and techniques every year. About the organization at Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens, their mission is to inspire others to grow their own fresh produce. They deliver residential and community-based training, consulting, and assistance in the vegetable garden. They are dedicated to the belief that most people should have the knowledge and opportunity to grow wholesome fruits and veggies in containers, raised beds, or in-ground gardens. And today, we're going to talk about growing your own tomatoes. Without question, tomatoes are the #1 homegrown garden crop. Kate's going to talk to you about the best ways to maximize your backyard harvest. This program is being recorded. If you have any questions, please send those to the chat to be asked after the program. And I will send out the recording tomorrow. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining us again.
Oh, thank you so much. And just to let you know, there are a lot of veggie dishes that go quite well with sriracha. Too hot for my taste, but that's okay. Some people might like it, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I get it.
I think I need to do that. Sorry.
Set me up here,
just 1 second. Yes. Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, very good. Awesome. All right. Let's do this one. Okay. I'm really excited about this presentation because it's the first presentation that I've ever done. Now there are 21 in the portfolio. So, and this is the first one that I did. And it's been, every once in a, well, believe it or not, people have been obviously growing veggies since we stopped being hunters and gatherers thousands of years ago. But yet, in this age of technology, things change. So I'm always in there tweaking the presentation, the several presentations. And I actually did this morning with this one. So let's talk about tomatoes, okay? In this presentation, we're going to learn about the benefits of growing tomatoes. We're going to learn about some terminology and verbiage around tomatoes that may be confusing. I know they were confusing to me. Growing from purchased plants, growing from seed, how to transplant them into the ground, canning, freezing them, and most importantly, harvesting your seeds for next year. So you don't have to buy them because they get expensive, and just growing in general, talk about expensive. The food prices are supposed to go up another 4 to 5% in 2022. So let's talk about the health benefits. They're good for colorectal disease, skin health. They help fight prostate cancer, help lower blood pressure. They fight diabetes, and they're good for the heart. Obviously, I'm a gardener and a garden coach and a lecturer, not a doctor, so I certainly wouldn't take this as a substitute for good, sound medical advice if you have an issue. However, regardless of what doctor you see and what plan you have, what diet plan, whether you go keto or whatever it is, there's no one in the world that'll tell you that eating more fruits and veggies are bad for you. So, all right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of growing your own. There are 6,996 different varieties of tomatoes. Brown ones, yellow ones, purple ones that are black. They're not really black, but they all different colors. There are tomatoes that are a pound, more than a pound for one tomato. And there are tomatoes they call spoon tomatoes that you can fit 10 of them in a spoon, little tiny Japanese tomatoes. So there are a whole bunch of varieties of tomatoes that you can grow on your own. The ones that you get in the store are in the store for one reason. That's because they traveled well to get there without bruising. The skins of those tomatoes are thicker, and they don't really taste as good. And I can't think that they would be anywhere near as healthy. So by the time commercially grown tomatoes actually get in the store, that first of all, they're old. And secondly, believe it or not, they're one of the most insecticide-laden products on the shelves, earning themselves a place on the dirty dozen list. I don't know if you folks I don't like to spread FUD. I like to have an upbeat discussion, but you have to know that that I really, really do believe that eating food that you grow yourself is much healthier for you. And if we could being a almost 15-year now cancer survivor, living a life without insecticides is definitely a plus for me. But there's been a list out there on the internet for well over a decade now, and it's called the Dirty Dozen list. It changes every once in a while, but on that list are the crops that are most chemically laden crops, and tomatoes are historically on that list. Also, when you go to the market and you see the tomatoes in the grocery store on that little piece of green styrofoam or white styrofoam or whatever, they're all exactly the same color. They're all exactly the same size. There's no variation anywhere. You don't even see a stem on them. I don't believe a lot of times they're not even grown in soil. They're grown commercially in a hothouse. And when you taste them, I don't even like tomatoes, that aren't grown organically. They just taste like shoe leather or cardboard. They just don't taste nearly as well. Much better to grow your own, especially because you can, freeze, and dehydrate your own as well. So so they can last you. You may not have them in the fresh form, but you can certainly have your tomato sauce and your tomato soup and your ketchup and all that made from your own fresh produce. Also, most commercially grown tomatoes are GMO. They're genetically modified products. I could go on and on and on about GMOs, but certain groups have linked GMO foods to undesirable consequences such as cancer. So every once in a while you hear some people that don't believe that, and that's fine too. I err on the side of caution. So here's some, and if you have any questions, Jessica and I will go over them at the end of the presentation. Please write them in the chat. No question is silly or foolish or what have you. Glad to ask, glad to answer anything you have. And if I don't know the answer, I can certainly get it. And I can certainly email you with it. So you hear this all the time, heirloom tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes. What's an heirloom tomato? An heirloom tomato are special varieties that have been harvested from generation to generation. Many varieties go back hundreds of years. Each fruit has exactly the same characteristics as its parent, or I should say as its clone, because tomatoes are self-pollinating. So seeds saved from a brandywine, a purple brandywine, pink brandywine, or a San Marzano, those seeds are going to look exactly like the parent. So that means you can save the seed and you'll have no issue. It's a good idea to save the seed. I'll go over saving the seeds at the end of this presentation. Do you have to grow heirlooms? You don't have to grow heirlooms. However, if you're going to save the seed for next year, you have to grow heirlooms. So, because the other seeds won't, the other seeds won't come true to form. So let's go over what a hybrid is. A hybrid is kind of like the opposite of an heirloom. A hybrid tomato is created from cross-pollinating two different varieties to pull the characteristics desired from each plant. Traits like disease resistance, longevity, size can also be desired qualities in a plant. Also, they're known as F1 hybrids. This natural selection process is quite safe. You're not playing with the genomes under a microscope and modifying the actual life itself. You're doing a pollination and hybridization happens in nature anyway. So don't be afraid of it. The only con from the seed saved from a hybrid plant is they may not yield the desired results. I'm going to give you an example. I don't even know if this is a true example, but just let me give you an example to the best of my ability. A lot of times you want if you want to can your tomatoes into a spaghetti sauce, you want a meaty. If you take a beefsteak and you make spaghetti sauce, it's going to be tomato water or tomato juice at the best. So you want a sauce tomato, an Amish paste, a San Marzano, or aroma, because they're meaty. However, none of those tomatoes are really big, so you have to use a whole bunch of them. So also, if you want a big tomato, you want to minimize your work, you want to use big tomatoes, you may want to use a beefsteak. As you know, beefsteak tomatoes can get quite large, but they're very watery. So what happens if you breed a sauce tomato with a beefsteak tomato and get a really meaty, huge tomato that you can use for sauce? That's the best of both breeds, right? I mean, for that particular purpose. So I'm sure they may do that. I'm not sure the one that they use, but Burpee Seeds has a super sauce hybrid, and it's a big, looks like a big beefsteak, but it's actually solid like this. So they do that all the time. Like some of the heirlooms inherently are prone to bacterial wilt or particular pests or whatever. So they may breed them with another variety that is not prone to those particular disease, that particular disease, bacteria, fungus, etc. And they keep doing it and they keep tweaking it until they get it right. This is not done by modifying the genes. This is not genetically modified. This is a hybridization process. They probably hand pollinate or what have you, whereas tomatoes are typically, self-pollinating. However, in the scenario I told you about, right? If you save the seeds from this beefsteak Roma hybrid, the seeds for the next generation may come up looking like a Roma, or they may come up looking like a beefsteak. You really never know. The process hasn't been, this hybridization process hasn't been done long enough to get a consistent result. Now, in several generations, maybe a couple of decades, these new hybrids have been created long enough so that they can actually become heirlooms. So people are doing this all the time. So anyway, I just want you to know the difference between an heirloom and a hybrid. As far as as far as we're concerned as home gardeners, you just can't save the seeds from the hybrid because you never know, what the offspring's gonna look like. So let's talk about GMO tomatoes. GMO tomatoes have their DNA altered in the laboratory. They're one of the first candidates to be genetically modified, way back in the 90s. Home gardeners, though, when you buy seeds from anyone, okay, any seed seller, from the Dollar Tree has American seeds for quarter pack, or from Burpee Seeds, you get some fancy schmancy tomato seeds for $4.50 a pack. All of those are not GMO. The people that grow GMO seeds are the ones that grow it commercially on big, huge farms. So you don't get GMO tomatoes when you grow your own. So also, let's talk about what's an organic tomato. Organic tomatoes were grown without the use of chemicals, pesticides, or GMO seed. So, in theory, you can have a hybrid tomato that's actually grown organically. So, not to make things more complicated, but organic tomatoes were grown using ingredients that don't have chemicals in them. So, ingredients from nature. For example, I feed my tomatoes plants with fish emulsion, which is fish guts. I also am prone to put in, for rooting, bone meal, which is a product of the slaughterhouse. For green leaf production, I will use blood meal, which is another product. So the animals feed the plants feed the animals. But there are a lot of vegetarian options as well to feed your tomatoes, but just not chemicals. I just don't use I don't have a place for chemicals in my garden. So let's talk about the difference between a determinate and an indeterminate tomato. Oh, and by the way, whether you have an heirloom or a hybrid tomato, your package will tell you that if you buy the seed. It will tell you whether it's an heirloom or a hybrid. It also will probably tell you if it's organic. It won't be GMO anyway, but it will tell you if it's heirloom or it's hybrid, so you'll know whether you can save the seed or not. Okay, so determinate. Determinate tomatoes grow to a certain height and then they dump their load of fruit and then they die. Rutgers, Roma, Celebrity, those are all determinate tomatoes. They go well in some of them. Oh yeah. Also, there are mini tomatoes as well. Dwarf tomatoes. They may only grow 18 inches. And so depending upon the height of the determinate, when it's considered full grown, you know, you may have to put a tomato cage over to put a stake in there and use the, my grandfather used to use garden twine. No one uses garden. You can use garden, you can find it at Job Lot or something, but they use a Velcro material a lot of times for tying up this stuff now. So they're good for pots. You know, you can grow in containers using it. You don't really have to prune the suckers from them. They don't have a lot of unproductive growth. You, like I say, you probably may require a little bit of staking, and they're smaller, so they can be planted fairly close together. Just to let you know, I don't know how many of you are parents. I was just telling Jessica, I'm a mom and I'm a grandma. So every year I've been besides the big giant pumpkins that I try to grow every year for Bella, the 5-year-old, I also grow her a little mini tomato so she can care for it herself, you know, in a container. It's a good idea to, you know, I always thought it was a good idea to get her to be more, you know, to learn about her own food, have some skin in the game, you know, learn how to care for things, etc. So she seems to like it. But there are a few determinate tomatoes that are really small tabletop varieties. And I'm going to tell you about a couple. One is called a 42-day tomato. That's 42 days from seed to fruit. So that's a good one. There's also a tiny Tim that grows maybe a couple of feet tall. Those are both cherry tomatoes, dwarf cherry tomatoes. Let's see what else you can do. The patio tomatoes. And one time they're small also, maybe 18 inches to 2 feet. And also totem tomatoes. I got a totem tomato plant one time, and tomatoes grow pretty much on top of each other and look like totem poles. And that's why they call it a totem tomato. So your determinants can be mini tomatoes from a foot tall all the way to 4 feet tall. And the thing that makes them determinate is the fact that it only grows to a certain height, then it dumps all its load, and that's the life cycle. Beneficial for people that don't have a whole lot of space. And you know, you can grow several kinds so they don't all you don't get them to dump all their fruit at once. Grow different kinds. Grow the 42-day tomato, grow the Roma, grow the Celebrity, you know, grow more than one kind. I'm all for a plan B, right? Sustainable people are all for plan B. So let's talk about the indeterminate tomato. These are most common, okay? An indeterminate tomato, if it's healthy, it'll keep growing until a frost kills it. Doesn't need a freeze. A frost will kill it. It's very, very sensitive, okay? They can be some people tell you they can be 12 feet tall, but typically they can grow 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet tall, and they're vines, so they're gangly. They need caging or trellising. Typically, you need one heck of a cage, tomato cage, to successfully, you know, plant a determinate tomato if it's growing tall. Because, you know, tomato cage is only like 5 feet tall. So what I do is I may take a tomato cage. I like tomato cages. It requires less stringing up and securing. However, what I do is I put a stake next to it, hammer a stake next to it into the ground, and tie it onto the cage, because the weight of you wouldn't believe it, but the weight of the tomatoes can knock that tomato cage right over. So, and they don't need to be pruned, but they're best when they're pruned. you have a lot of smaller unproductive limbs on a, not limbs, but unproductive branches on a tomato that they're not doing anything. They're stunted, they grow crooked, they have little twigs coming out of them. And if the plant itself is concentrating on growing those little mini sticks, that means they're not concentrating on growing fruit. So it seems really weird that you want to hack up a plant in order for it to grow, to do better, but you really do. There's several ways of pruning tomatoes. The way I do it is I'm the lazy gardener, so I take off the unproductive limbs and just trellis as I put them in cages and do a minimal amount of trellising and staking. But some people grow single stem tomatoes. They grow several feet high. They actually will trellis right over an archway. You just do some research if you want to get fancy. I'm not a fancy gardener, so let's look at some examples of some indeterminate tomatoes. Most of your heirlooms, your big boys, which is a beefsteak tomato. Believe it or not, one of the biggest tomato plants you can get is your cherry tomato. When I first started out gardening, I'm thinking, wow, is this, I can grow a small tomato, a little cherry tomato in a small amount of space. No, it's a huge plant. So, big boy, which is a beefsteak, most cherry tomatoes, early girl, and most heirloom tomatoes will fall into that category. That's where you get your big bang for your buck, really. They require a little more work because you got to, like I say, prune them and keep them nice so they don't topple over. But you can get hundreds of tomatoes off of decent cherry tomato. So, all right. So, all right. So let's talk about your purchased plants. I think that it's a good idea to grow from seed, but you have to start from seed several weeks before you plant out. And you'll see I have more information on that. So I like to plant from seed, but not everyone has the facilities. I have several grow lights, and I'm a garden nut, self-proclaimed. So I have a greenhouse outside and I have lights downstairs, and I have a lot of stuff. But some people just like to go and buy, most people just like to go buy plants. And that's fine too. And I do want you to know that the plants that are purchased from a number of the local nurseries are fine. But a lot of the big box stores, such as Home Depot, Walmart, Target, a lot of them sell plants from the same company, which is Bonnie Plant. I think they might have been bought by Miracle Grow. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Bonnie Plant sells a good variety of plants. Some are organic. It'll say on the label if it's organic or not. But I want to, the reason I say this is I want to give you a warning. We have that same company, Bonnie Plant, that delivers over in Bellingham, town next to me. And they'll deliver the same plants to Walmart, then they'll go across the street and dump off a bunch at the Home Depot. Well, the people at Walmart, when I was there anyway, did not have the best process and did not take really good care of those plants. Whereas those people from Home Depot, I think they probably hire seasonal help to go out there and constantly water and prune and make sure that they're covered when it gets too hot so they don't burn up. So anyway, the same plant, but they're cared for better in specific places. So find a place, even if you're going to go big box store, and find a place that that takes care of them well. And also look at your places. Like we have a little place here in the town next to me, North Smithfield, Rhode Island. And it's an Ace Hardware. They're all franchised. And I don't know where they get their plants, but they sure do have a better deal. The tomatoes, instead of buying a big pot of tomatoes, in a 6-inch, pot. You'll get them in the 6-pack, much cheaper. And they'll come up just as fast, you know. So the whole thing about buying the 6-pack of tomatoes is that you don't get the variety you want. So trade with your friends and have fun with it. So when you buy plants, okay, even if you buy them from Ace Hardware or wherever you buy them, you don't really know how long they've been outdoors unless you can really trust the place. So they still need to do what's called hardening off, just to make sure. And here up in the northern part of the country, what we do is when we grow plants indoors even in a greenhouse, they're not very thick, the outside of the stem. And what we do in order to make it thick and make it the outside of the skin of the plant to be hard is we leave them out for an hour. Then we take them in. Then we leave them out for a couple of hours, and then we take them in. And then we do so incrementally for the next week or two to make sure they are acclimated to the outside environment. Very important, because these are living things and they may go into shock. I can't tell you how many times when I was an experienced gardener, I would do such foolish things, not realizing, and my plants would revolt on me. So when they have to be hardened off. Also, when you buy these seedlings, same way when you don't, when you grow your own, you can never ever even if you buy them from the store and they're already nice, right? You can never ensure, never leave them to dry out, because they're little. They only have a pot that's 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, or what have you. Once the moisture has been sucked up into the plant, the plant's going to die. It'll die in a day if it's in the sun. So don't ever let it dry out. So in our area, it's safe to leave the hardened off plants outdoors. I would say the 7th didn't hold true this time. So, and I'm going to change this. I don't want to give anyone the wrong idea. By the way, here, I think probably in Chelmsford area as well, it's going to be in the 80s. So as long as the outside temperatures have reached 50 degrees, you're all set to plant outdoors. And for us, that's going to be like Wednesday. So what's the date Wednesday? I don't know, the 11th or something. So in theory, we can plant outside by Wednesday. But if you did here, I don't think it's going to happen, because I always look. There's nothing that's as better friend to the gardener than that 10-day forecast. I'm telling you, that saved me many, many times. So if you do hear of a freeze, I should say a frost coming, you cover the plant with a plastic top or a lightweight blanket, but it's 99.99% not going to happen in May. So typically, as I say, 50 degrees at night, and you're all set to plant. So growing from seed, tips and pointers. Don't try to grow from seed. You can take your cucumber seeds, your squash seeds, your lettuce seeds, carrot seeds, beet seeds, a whole bunch of stuff, and plant it outside, and it will grow. You can do the same with your tomato seeds. However, by the time the soil is warm enough to germinate a tomato seed, it's got to be 75 to 80 degrees. By the time it's warm enough, you'll get the seed to grow, but by the time the plant is going to bear fruit, it's already October, and we're going to have a freeze. So that's why you always have to either buy plants or start plants from seed indoors and plant them outside mid-May. We just don't have a long enough season for it. So, and also when you plant seeds, be aware that you grow different types of tomatoes, and you grow more than you need, because not all seeds are viable. Different types, because some may not take. And you want to, you want a cherry tomato for your, put it in a little baggie for your lunch for snacks. And then you may want the tomato sandwich. You may want the beefsteak, and then you want the whole mother load of little ones for your cherry tomatoes, and you want the sauce tomatoes or what have you. But grow different kinds so they don't all come out at once also. Because that's something, I mean, people grow all the zucchinis, and some of those zucchinis get big as a baseball bat, and they all come out at the same time. So it's best to grow different types so you can kind of stagger your production. Because it's always best to grow when you plan your meals as a gardener, you plan farm to table, garden to plate. That's the best way, the most nutritious way, not to fill up your refrigerator so you have to clean it out. Just garden to plate. If tomato seeds, getting seeds to germinate takes a little bit of patience, and I'll explain that process. If tomato seeds are kept airtight and cool, they can last for at least 4 years. Airtight, cool, and I should add dark. Because if they're exposed to bright light, what happens to any kind of plant life when it sees light? It tries to grow towards the light, and you may get some false germination. Of course, then the plant's going to die. It doesn't have anything to feed it. So some of the big purchase sellers, the seed sellers, the biggest, Burpee Seed online. You can get Burpee Seeds at Job Lot too. Baker Seed, Heirloom Seed Company, that's rareseeds.com, or you can go johnnyseeds.com, get a variety of quality seeds. But also, I really should update this side because I've been getting cheaper as the prices are going up. I've been getting cheaper. So as I say, American Seed Company has 25-cent packs of seeds, and they're perfectly fine. They don't have fancy seeds. Like I get little pear-shaped, little tiny yellow pear-shaped tomatoes. They won't have that. But if you want some cherry tomatoes, beefsteak, early girls or what have, they have the normal varieties there. Also dollarseed.com, obviously, packs for $1. Here's another one. Little Shop of Seeds has seeds for 75 cents a pack. They used to be 50 cents a pack last year, but they went up 50%, which is a lot. But so there's a number of ways you can get seeds. The best way to get your seeds is from careful analysis of the best crops you had the previous year and save those seeds. But if you do have to buy it, these are a few good alternatives for you. So materials that you need for seed starting. Purchase good quality seeds. You can use the seed trays, or you can use peat cups. A peat cup is a little cup. They come in different sizes. They're little cups. And you bury, and after you start the seed in it, you bury the whole cup because it's made of a peat moss. Some of them have some, maybe some manure. It doesn't smell though. It's well aged, and and pressed into a little cup on its own. So you can use that. You can use paper cups. You can use yoga cups. You can use solo cups. So, this is a good advice, sage advice. Do not use potting soil when you first start your seeds. It has, when a seed is germinating, it uses the husk of its own seed, the seed husk, to feed the seed as it breaks through the soil. The first two leaves, it breaks through the soil. It doesn't need any fertilizer. So you use a seed starting mix. You can buy it, or you can use those little peat pots. I think you've probably seen them. There are a number of different kinds of seed starting methods, and none of them have any nutrition in them. They don't need nutrition at that point. You've got little pellets that look like little hockey pucks. You put hot water on them and they puff up. They actually hold their own. It's a cup in its own right without without anything around it. You have root riot, which is a long type, looks like some sort of a plug. You've got, some people use rock wool to start their seeds, and that's a little bit of a woven mineral material to start the seeds, and a lot of different things, but typically you don't use potting soil. It's a little bit too harsh, a little bit too heavy. What you're looking for at this point is just to get that seed out of the ground or out of the soil and get some roots to develop, okay? The light source, you're gonna need a very bright window. Best to get a grow light though. You know, I helped a friend of mine start up her seed starting stuff a couple of years ago, and we got one at Job Lot. I think it was 25 bucks. LED lights are the best. That's what they're selling now. Light emitting diode, LED lights. They have the bright light that's required for the seedlings, but they don't have that heat that you know, that can kill them. It can burn them right up. So you want the light to be fairly low right near the seedlings so that it doesn't thin and get real gangly and straggly and kill itself trying to go towards the light. So you want the light to be real close to it, but you don't want it to be real hot or it'll kill it. So best to use the LED lights. They're fairly inexpensive. They went way, way down. That's another thing that's changed in gardening is those LED lights. It's a real revelation. So also, before, you know, the first couple of days, after you plant your seedlings, your seeds, not your seed, yeah, when you plant your seeds, you don't need any light. A seed does not need light at the first few days. It needs heat to germinate. So you can get a really warm area. Some people use the top of their refrigerator, or some people break down and spend the 25, 27, 30 bucks at Walmart or Amazon and get the heat mat specifically made for that. So that will get your seedlings off to a good start and will almost ensure that they germinate properly. And once they do, then you can put them under the lights. So, okay, so you see this is actually, I believe this is a cucumber seedling. This is the tomato seedling over here. You see these leaves here, this leaf here, and this one here. Same way as this one here and over here on the cucumber seedling. These are coiledon, I believe is the name of it. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but those are starter leaves. And those leaves have one purpose. The purpose of those leaves is to push the seedling out of the soil. That's the only purpose. Once this, and it's not considered a viable seedling until it's produced at least 1 or 2 sets of true leaves. And these, as you can see, this is the true leaf. This is a true leaf. And these here are the true leaves. Okay. So this is what you do. You fill your cup with a starter mix or a starter seed starting mix of some sort. Moisten until the soil is damp. Ensure that a tray on the bottom of the cups, you got to catch any drainage. The room temperature or the bottom light, it has to be 70 to 75 degrees. Make sure the sun will shine brightly for 6 to 8 hours, or with the grow lights, you can leave the grow lights on a good long time, the majority of the day, up to 16 hours actually. Poke a 1/4-inch hole in the center of the starter cup. Place 2 or 3 seeds in each cup. Cover the hole slightly with starter mix and pack it. Cover with a plastic wrap or a dome. A lot of those seed starting trays you get have those plastic domes. They work wonderfully. They hold the heat in, and they actually create a greenhouse effect, and the condensation rains back down on your tomatoes, and they're happy as clams and very, a lot less work for us, right? Then when you do spray them, you look at the top of it every couple of days and see if it starts. You don't see so many of those droplets. you take it and you spray it with a little spray bottle. You can reuse your Windex bottles, you know, if you have anything like that. And in this couple of, oh yeah, and don't pour water over it because you may dislodge the actual seeds from the soil. And you need good soil to seed compaction in order to have a good germination. And once the seed pops up, you got to remove it. That, you know, if you did have a cover on it, some kind of a dome, you got to remove it because you may develop mold. Okay, so first transplant and hardening off. After a while, 2 leaves will develop. If more than 1 seed germinates, you know, gardeners are very frugal and very sustainable, and you know, we always have a plan B in the works. And one simple way to have a plan B is to plant more than 1 seed in each thing in case you lose one. So don't plant a whole bunch. The seeds won't grow if they're all crowded. The roots will compete with each other for resources, and they'll all die. So you can try to pull one out and then transplant it somewhere else if you have a good finger dexterity if you want. Or you'll have to snip off and just leave one. That's really the best way to do it. I know it sounds cruel to kill a perfectly viable seedling, but you can try it the other way. And typically, now this is the way I do it because I start a lot of seedlings. I have a little tray with little holes in it, right? That can hold 40 or 72 seedlings. And then once I see them coming up and they're almost ready to go, I actually transplant them into 4-inch seed cups. And when I do that first transplant, I then can use some potting soil in the cups. That has a little bit of fertilizer in it, or else you can use a little bit of a liquid fertilizer. They have fertilizer specifically for seedlings that you can use as well. And then you start as I said, the same hardening off process as you would start with the plants that you purchased, and make sure they're hardened off. I would hate going through all this process. Sowing the seeds, water them every day, under the heat lamp, with the heat mat, with the dome on it, checking them every day, snipping them and caring for them. And then you don't harden them off properly and they die. That would be a real bummer. So I think I'm going to check and make sure that I have this correctly. So set up correctly. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, I'm going to reshare. Okay, here we go. I think he explains it, does a good job of explaining it.
Welcome to my first vegetable garden. Today I want to show you how to plant your tomato seeds indoors so that you can have seedlings. I've done a couple videos on how you actually make the starting mix that I'm using here, how do you prepare the seed cells, and I'll post the links in this video for those. But now you're at the point where you've made your starting mix, you've learned how to pack your seed cells, and now you just want to plant your tomato seeds. These are seeds that I saved myself. This is actually a Russian Oxard bicolor variety. And keep in mind that there's 9 cells here. I'm going to tell you to put in 2 seeds. You could put in 3 if you want, and that's just so that you're not waiting around for failed seeds to germinate. If you put in a couple more, you have better chances of your seedlings germinating, or you're getting 9 plants. My point is there's 9 plants here, so when these grow and they're ready to be transplanted, they're going to have to go into cups like this or into a recycled container like this. So you just have to make sure that you grow the amount of tomato seedlings that will fit indoors in your grow closets or your grow box, because you'll end up with a lot of tomatoes. But my strategy, basically what I suggest is put in 2 seeds, 1 seed, 2 seed, 1 seed, 2 seed, 1 seed, 2 seed, and you can see the seeds in there. Once you have the tomato seeds down, just use a pencil or a popsicle stick, push them down about 1/4 of an inch. You don't have to be exact. If you're 1/8 of an inch, it's not going to matter. If you go down a ½ inch, it's not going to matter. The starting mix in here is packed nice and tightly, so these seeds are not going to fall to the bottom. And then once you have them all pressed in, all right, there we go. You're just going to take a pinch of the starting mix. Again, this starting mix is pre-moistened. Cover up your plants, your seeds, and they're ready to grow. Now, this is pre-moistened, but it's not wet through. You definitely need to have your starting mix totally soaked when you're germinating plants. What I've said before is you don't want to pour water on top of here because this is going to splash out. Your seeds are going to get knocked around. So always fill your tray just like this. This happens to have a liquid fertilizer in it. You don't need, this is brown, you don't need a liquid fertilizer at this point. For germinating seeds, you just need water. But this was from another video. So you leave this in here for about 20 to 30 minutes until it sucks up enough water and this looks nice and wet to your touch. Something like this. You can see this is just a little bit lighter. This is a fully soaked starting mix. These are cucumbers over here. So once you have that, you put these under your grow lights. In 5 to 10 days, they're going to germinate. You're going to see your tomatoes coming up, and in about 2 weeks, you're going to end up with tomato seedlings that look like this. And you can see, in this case, most of them came up. And I'm going to do another video to show you, how you manage these once they're up. Hope you enjoyed this. Please check out my blog at www.therustedgarden.blogspot.com and also.
Okay. So bottom watering is also an option. If you, or the other option is, as I say, lightly spray. Excuse me. Some people wet the seed starting mix and then stick it in before they plant the seeds. The whole purpose of going through all these, jumping through these hoops, is so that you have good seed to soil contact and don't dislodge the seeds with water. So tomatoes are really good for container gardening. So even if you don't have a lot of space, you can get a big bang for your buck. In order to do plant them in container gardens, there's a lot of different options for containers nowadays. Ensure your containers are at least 4 gallon in size, or you can use the Home Depot or Lowe's buckets. Those are 5 gallons. Mix it with some lightweight material, some peat moss, some compost, maybe put some sand in there, or you can buy a potting mix. Don't use just compost in there. It's too heavy for containers. Make sure there's drainage in the bottom. If there's no drainage, you need to put some pebbles in the bottom to absorb any overflow. Well, it doesn't absorb, it just stops the roots from flooding if there's a heavy rain or what have you. Also, containers are very susceptible to drying out, so you have to keep them moist at all times. Sometimes you can put a tomato cage right on top of the tomato cage right on top of the container itself, and they fit right in. Be aware to water the soil and not necessarily the foliage, the leaves. It's to get it into the roots. Sometimes that's difficult with a plant that's in a pot. It's hard to kind of get in there, but you need to get in there and concentrate on the soil. They also have self-watering containers. If anyone wants to check into that, they're not self-watering, but they have false bottoms that allow you to water less frequently. And your tomatoes, basically they'll start ripening in July, and then you'll see the green ones come out, and then, then they'll be ready weeks later. So, okay, so final transplant into the ground. This is not the container. This is if you put in your raised bed or out in the ground. Make sure your soil is rich and has a good component of compost in it. I amend my tomato beds every year with compost. Basically, that's how I feed my garden, is through the compost that I make with my leaf scraps and my grass clippings and my coffee grounds, etc. Sprinkle fertilizer around the plants. Make sure your pH is right. And you can get a pH testers. They cost $15, or you can send it off to the extension. There's people at UMass, I believe, that will do it for you as well. Tomato plants need to be 24 inches apart. That seems like a lot. You can get away with them being closer if you do square foot gardening or whatever, but that takes more trellising and more time and more effort. So definitely look into that square foot gardening if you want to do that. Tomatoes can be planted very deeply. If you look at a tomato stem, you'll see it's fuzzy along the stem. It's fuzzy along the stem because those are all immature roots. If you plant it deeply, all those extra those little immature fuzzy roots will actually grow into roots, and it'll make your plant sturdier. And of course, the more roots a plant has, the more nutrients it sucks up, and the more water it sucks up, and the better your yield will be. Also use tomato cages or wooden stakes or garden twine to make them stay vertical. They'll start ripening in July, and they'll harvest until freeze or in late September as well. So here's another video about the final in-ground transplant. This gentleman likes to do cherry tomatoes, so just be aware that he's biased. So.
Hello everybody, I'm your produce guy, and this evening we're out in the garden. I've got some tomatoes here, and I'm going to show you what technique I use to transplant tomatoes. The reason I'm having to transplant another tomato, I've got some in the ground. You can see behind me here in the garden box. I've got some growing, but these were planted back in May, and on May 31st, Memorial Day, we had an inch of snow here in northern Utah, and one of my cherry tomatoes, not that it was too cold for it, the weight of the snow snapped the main stem, and so I lost that tomato. Now, I love growing smaller tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, medium-sized tomatoes. The reason being, if you grow one of those big beefsteak tomatoes that grow up to a pound each, suppose you have a bug or a bird or something attack your tomato, you've ruined a big, beautiful tomato and a lot of tomato. But with cherry tomatoes, medium-sized tomatoes, if that happens to one of them, you got a whole bunch more that you can work with and not have to worry about. So that's one reason I like those. Now, tomatoes actually thrive on transplanting, and in a minute here I want to show you exactly my technique for planting tomatoes and why it's so good. So let's go ahead and get planting. Okay, the first step for planting here is we're going to dig out a space for this tomato. This is why I like my 8-inch deep boxes in my garden. It's for my tomatoes, because I'm going to dig this all the way down here. Okay, we're down at the bottom there. Alright, next step. Tomatoes, as I mentioned before, they love being transplanted. And here's what we're going to do. This big long stem, we're going to go ahead and pinch off these lower leaves right here, just like that. Now don't worry, this is all a good thing that's happening. You can see those roots that are around there. We're going to break apart those roots so that they will be stimulated to move out and grow out into the garden box and not be bound up like they are. Okay, so there we've got our tomato. Pinched off those. We might take one more off here. I'm going to drop this down into the hole all the way in, and we're going to bury that stem. Now, the reason we do that is what's going to happen is we cover this stem up. That stem is going to send out additional roots, and so there'll be more roots there to feed the plant. It'll grow a sturdier, hardier plant. with more flavorful tomatoes. And who doesn't love the taste of a garden tomato? My goodness, that's why we all grow them, I think. So that's in there. Let's just move that dirt back around it. Okay, now with our tomato all in the ground, we're going to go ahead and use growing them on the vertical system here. We'll just wrap it around the string, and we'll wrap that on the string all the way up. You can see the flowers right here is where the first fruit is going to set. On the other tomatoes that are already in the ground, those flowers are all down about here, and so by planting them deeper in the ground, you get a fruit closer to the ground and easier to harvest that way. These are a big red tomato. I think that's the name of it, big cherry or big red. I bought down at the nursery. The other three are Sweet 100 variety, and they call them that because the cherry tomatoes grow in clusters. This one that we just planted here, those tomatoes will grow to be about the size of a $50. So pretty big for a cherry tomato. That is the system to transplant tomatoes. Of course, it's the evening here, nice and cool, nice time to be out in the garden. Great time to transplant. That gives the plants overnight to get acclimatized. I don't know, acclimated is the word I think I want. Acclimated to their new surrounding. We'll get some water on this here in just a minute, and it'll be ready to go, good to go in the morning. So that's the system there for planting tomatoes. Bury them deep.
So that
and
gentleman, the secret to that, he was using the square foot method. So basically it's the same. The whole thing I was trying to explain is that you just bury the plant as deeply as you can and water it in well. So, okay, so preserving tomatoes. You can freeze tomatoes. All you have to do is blanch them. Submerge tomatoes in boiling water for 3 minutes. Remove them and submerge them in an ice bath for 3 minutes. That's called blanching. That preserves the color, the texture, and also cleans the tomato thoroughly. Add them to freezer bags. Remove the air and freeze. So those are tomatoes. You can, and these are whole tomatoes. You can certainly preserve the they won't taste the same, but you can use them, when you stew tomatoes or what have you. Also canning, you can can them as well. You don't need a pressure canner to can your tomatoes. There are instructions in this link. I will share this presentation with anyone who sends me an email that they want it, and it'll give you the instructions. Also, the USDA, if you type in your browser USDA canning guide, you can certainly find different methods for freezing and canning spaghetti sauce, chili, anything you can make with tomatoes, tomato juice, anything. So USDA canning guide or USDA food preservation, any of that will get you to that link. You don't need anything, any pressure canner. Those are expensive. They can cost anywhere between $100 and $200. All you need is a big lobster pot and some fresh mason jars. And this is because tomato is a high acid food. However, if you're going to make a sauce out of your tomatoes and you're going to add peppers, big chunks of peppers and onions, and you're going to add the meat right to the sauce, etc., then you have to have a pressure canner, or you can get very sick. So harvesting your tomato seeds for the next season. Let's just watch the video on this. You have this for reference. Okay.
The first thing you're going to do is when you want to save your tomato seeds is to find the best tomato you've got and cut it through the horizontal line like this one. Here we've got the tomato. We've squeezed the pulp out of that, and we've got that in a bowl. Now that we've got all the pulp and the seeds in the bowl, cover it up with some Glad wrap, and we've got some holes punched in the top of that. Now this is what it'll look like after 2 or 3 days fermentation. We've got quite a build-up of mold that's grown on the top of that, which is exactly what we want.
Tip, this looks pretty gross, right? It really does. But you are supposed to get this mold develops because tomato seeds and cucumber seeds as well have a gelatinous membrane that surrounds the seed itself. So, you know, if you just dried them and stored them in that gelatinous membrane was still viable, then you could get mold that could develop in your seeds. So this way you're really cleaning it off and you're wearing off that that membrane, and that's what's creating that mold.
Now in this shot it shows me scooping off the excess mold and putting that to one side. Now here in this shot I'm straining the pulp through the sieve to get rid of the excess moisture. Here I've just moved the sieve around above the plastic container to get rid of the rest of the juice. So as you can see there, we've got quite a good amount of excess juice that's come off the seeds. Now in this shot I'm just putting more water through the sieve to wash the seeds clean. Now I've poured the remaining seeds back into the jug. Any seeds that float to the top, scoop them off, and I'll throw those away. In this photo here we've got the plate covered with greaseproof paper, which is what we're going to put the seeds on. Now we've got the seeds here looking pretty good. We've washed them so they've all come up really well. Now here we have the seeds on the greaseproof
here in the US, or parchment paper.
Paper. So this is where we'll dry them. Now this shot here is all the seeds that have been dried, and that has taken about 3 or 4 days of just moving them around on the paper. And finally here we have the end result, your tomato seeds that you can either sell off or plant again for next season. I hope you found this video helpful. To learn more, just visit justadworms.com.
So that's our presentation. Just one other trick about the seed saving. I may have mentioned it already. Keep them make sure they're completely dry before you store them. Put them in a cool place. We don't have root cellars anymore, most of us. So keep them in your basement or in your garage, and keep them dark so they don't try to germinate. And they should last. And if you can, you know what some people do when you only have a few. I have thousands of seeds, literally. You can put them in a Ziploc bag, get the air out of it, and put them in your freezer. You'll do even better that way. So, but definitely save your seeds. As I say, they can be expensive. So I'm going to take some questions now. I see that there are some. I should go in the Q&A, Jessica. Is that right? Maybe you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes,
That's
there's some in the
okay.
Q&A. I believe one person put their questions into both the Q&A and the chat.
Okay.
So we can start with the chat.
Okay.
What steps should be taken to prevent blossom end rot? If it shows up, how do you treat it?
Okay, blossom end rot is actually a calcium deficiency. So unfortunately, once your tomato gets blossom end rot, there's no way you can repair that tomato. You can pick it then and cut off the black piece, and it will be just perfectly fine. And the way you would treat it is by using, let's see here, powdered lime or ground eggshells, and put them in the soil, but it really won't work for a number of months. So unfortunately, you know, keep it hydrated. Another thing about blossom end about your plant not absorbing enough calcium is that you have to make sure it's well watered, so you may be able to slow down the that deficiency by making sure it's watered. Or you may want to cut off any of the branches that are affected with the blossom end rot. It shouldn't completely destroy your plant, but if the other thing is, if I had a bed of tomatoes that had blossom end rot, I would definitely the next season grow them in a different place. Rotate your crops out of there, treat that soil, and then you can remove the vegetable bed back to that original place. But it does take a while for the calcium to actually be effective. The leaching of the calcium from the eggshells of the lime into the soil takes a while, unfortunately. It's a very common problem. So.
Is it too late to plant tomatoes from seeds this season? Are there any other fruits, vegetables that can still be started from seeds this season?
I have to tell you, it's right now at this time, I'm telling you, I'm ready to plant my seedlings Wednesday. So it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get them prepared. So that'll be May, June, July. I think it's too long. Unless you want to plant a dwarf variety, Tiny Tim, 42-day tomato, or a very small dwarf variety that they call it 42-day tomato because it comes, like I say, it'll mature in a month and a half. There are plenty of plants that you can start from seed now. Or I should say, well, there's things plenty that you can plant from seed now, certainly this week, I should say, I'll by the end of the week, you can plant your peas if you haven't done so. You can plant your beans, your lettuce, all your squash, your cucumber, and your basil, and your other herbs. I'd say they grow your beets and your carrots, turnips as well. You can plant from seed now. The only things you really have a hard time planting from seed this late, to start it would be your tomatoes, your peppers, and your eggplant. Those are tough. So.
Do determinate plants not carry the risk of blossoms falling off if there is a heat wave during blossom time and less yield?
No, I believe they have the same predisposition to blossom drop in other issues. If obviously if you want to reduce blossom drop, or any of that, then your best bet would actually, believe it or not, would be to get perhaps a hybrid variety would be a little bit hardier and stronger. So they would have the same issues. So.
All right, and the last question that I have here in the chat is there something that needs to be done before seeding in a coir pot? That's COIR pot.
No, a coir is coir is equivalent of peat. Actually, it doesn't have any nutrition in it really, but it's spongy and it allows for the growth of the seedling. And you just treat the coir pot, you would treat that the same as you would a peat pot or anything else. It doesn't require anything special. So, and what coir is it is the fibrous husk of a coconut, actually, that people use. It's much more sustainable to the environment, not to your garden. Peat moss, sphagnum peat moss is quite sustainable in your garden. It's slightly acidic and your plants love it. However, it's not good to the earth where it's harvested in Canada. But coconut coir is very readily available and replenishable. So that's what people prefer. And you can treat it the same. Anything you do with peat moss, you do with the coir.
Excellent. So that's all the questions that I have. I don't see that anybody has submitted any others. So I guess I'll just close now saying that I'm sure Kate would appreciate if anybody has any questions after the presentation. If you'd like to reach out to her, her website is Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. And I can pass along any contact information that Kate would like me to, so that people can reach out and ask their questions after the presentation. And everyone will receive the recording of this tomorrow once I have it processed. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, just one thing. I'm going to put, I'm trying to think if I should, I'm going to put this in here in the chat. I'm going to put my email, veggieGardens@gmail.com. BV Veggie Garden. If you have any questions about gardening or want to chat, I'm always looking to network and meet new folks that love to garden. And so feel free to join the organic food growing movement. So I look forward to hearing from you. And Jessica, I will forward you the information in the presentation copy, and then you'll be forwarding out the link, correct?
Yeah, I'll forward out the link to the
Good.
presentation. So Gina was asking if you would mind sharing the slides.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
excellent. Great. I
Yeah.
will send all that information ahead tomorrow. So thank you again very much, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you very much. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.